Hello, everyone. Welcome back for episode 14 of the Ready, Set, Shag podcast. Man, I can't talk today. Today's a little bit different episode. I usually have someone on that, I don't know. Oh, I guess that's a total lie. This is a normal episode of Ready, Set, Shag because I admire this person because we've been friends for a long time. We've had many great conversations. As of late, we've disagreed on a lot of different things, but I don't know. That's sort of the way of the world. I guess people grow and evolve and change, but that's just kind of where we're at. So we go back and forth quite a bit on Facebook, or we have recently, just because part of me, the contrarian in me, wants to maybe stir the pot a little bit. And my friend is someone who is not afraid to push back. And when I brought up the fact that I wanted to have someone on that didn't agree with me on certain things, he decided that it was time that we talked again. We talked several years ago on an older podcast that I ran, and we talked about things that we missed, things that we we're just doing a normal catch up. And I'm sure we'll do that today for some extent, but also be able to get into some of the things that we disagree with and likely find common ground, because he's a good guy. But he's not someone who does online content creation or anything. So again, it's a little bit different. He is well, let's just bring him on. Mike, what's going on, dude?
Hey, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Pretty good. I didn't want to keep talking about you behind your back. Might as well just bring you on.
Yeah,
I'll let you tell your story about, like, I don't know, just give us a little rundown, like the limited chat that we have and those who will listen afterwards. Just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, like you mentioned, I'm not an online content creator so much. So a little bit out of my element here, and it's weird when you get like a camera on you. It's like, oh hey, just talk about yourself for a little bit. It's like I knew this was coming and I didn't necessarily prepare for it. So yeah, I live in Connecticut. I work all the time. I got 7 dogs. I'm an engineer for an adhesives company. It's as fun as it sounds, but I also brew and bartend at a local brewery, and that's something of a passion of mine. I've always been into the culinary scene. Actually, I got my first restaurant job thanks to you, Tom, which is like still something I like boggles my mind. And then I never left the industry, So and for what it's worth, it shaped a lot of me through the rest of my life. So yeah. Anyway, I'm not as online savvy as maybe the rest of the show, but I do like getting in, talking and whatnot. So if you get me going, I'll just keep going. So
Yes, I know that. Yeah, no, I said, and like I said pre-show, I appreciate you coming on, because I think, and I struggle with this when meeting someone face to face and trying to talk things out is it kind of an intimidating thing to do, when you're not in agreement with something. It's easy to go back and forth in comments, but speaking to someone is difficult. And there's even, like, I even have butterflies leading up to this, because I'm like, I've known you my whole life, and we played this with each other as kids, going over each other's house, playing video games, and never want to lose. You can't lose the memories, but you don't want to lose the people in your life that you like and respect. And you're one of those people. Like, when you comment on something, I know it comes from a good place. I know, unlike some that might respond, it's not necessarily to hurt. It's just to, maybe you're frustrated, and, there are some, I don't know how to say, like, if there is a little contempt in there, it's fleeting. It's likely not,
well, you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? Like you mentioned kind of in the lead up, the contrarian in you likes to kind of stir the pot, and like, I'm similarly afflicted, right? And
yeah.
My main goal, right, is like I poke and prod a little bit, and like and sometimes a lot of it, sometimes you put the screws to them, but like it's enjoyable, for me. Maybe it's a toxic trait, but it's enjoyable for me to kind of stir some shit up. So obviously, when you meet somebody who is kind of like the same way, it's like whether you're on the same side or the opposite side, like you feed off that, and that's kind of how we, I think, ended up in the scenario that we are, where there obviously delivery, it's hard through text. There's a lot of intention that gets lost. So you just kind of, you have to take it by face value to what you're reading off the page. But yeah, I'm coming from a similar place, if not an opposite place, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the one thing I say to my wife occasionally is, because she's probably kick me in the balls if she heard this. She doesn't watch the podcast or listen, but I told her the other day, and I'll say this because I told it to her face. I said, or at least I asked her to do this. I didn't tell her anything. I said, because she was reading back a text that someone had wrote to her, but she was doing it. It was just oozing with contempt, And I was like, hey, like, do yourself a favor. I was like, read this text message, but don't put any like inflection on it. Like, just read it as words, and then see if it comes across different. And she didn't love that I asked her to do that, but she considered it, and we may have come to a different conclusion about the intentions behind the text message. And I really try and do that when I'm reading comments either on Twitter or Facebook, and like, well, I'm not going to editorialize this particular person's tone of voice, because they could just be there typing and like they would just say it but it's easy because I think there's a part of every person that wants it,
Right. Well, it's like, oh, I get to be mad, right? Like, oh, give me, like, yeah, listen to this person, like trying to set me off, It's like, it's easy to do. And some amount of people, I think, are actively seeking it. And of course, some people are actively putting that out there. And then there's all of the in between, right? Where it's miscommunication, misunderstanding, and what have you, And it's, you do what you can, but it can't be helped, right?
Right.
It can't be completely helped.
Right. And I think in this case, again, where for those who are joining, it looks like some people from the Side Scrollers podcast are coming over to say hello. Craig, thank you for sharing your audience with us. Mike and I are old friends, and we're gonna, I guess, broach some things that we've attempted to talk about on Facebook, but as most people know, it's really, really hard to discuss things in the comments. And and it's been brought up a few times in the Facebook threads. Why discuss these things if you can't actually discuss them? And to answer it more succinctly than in a comment, it's really it's to perhaps generate the conversation or the want for a conversation on a particular subject. One that we talked about recently is the headlines that it was a New York Times article about the Nebraska teen that was getting arrested or was in jail for 90 days. For those in chat who don't know or didn't see it, there was a headline that stated Nebraska teen who used pills to end pregnancy gets 90 days in jail. So I posted that alongside the first paragraph of the article that goes into greater detail about what had happened and why she was going to jail for 90 days. And I'll just read that real quick. I'm not posting it on here because it will reveal my Facebook post, and because I have a larger online presence, I don't feel like having people stalk me. So
fair enough.
So the first paragraph stated a Nebraska teen who used abortion pills to terminate her pregnancy was sentenced on Thursday to 90 days in jail after she pleaded guilty earlier this year to illegally concealing human remains. So this was a very different. So Mike, this is one some of you and I disagreed on. I had claimed that it was a lie. The headline was a lie. And my problem, and this is what really started me down my path 4 years ago, or whatever it is now, three and a half years ago, when I started just looking at how news would manipulate things. And I understand this happens a lot across the spectrum, but this one seemed a little bit more egregious because we're talking about abortion, right? It's a big hot topic. It's a wedge issue in Washington, as far as I'm concerned. And so saying that, so the headline to me states, this person gave herself an abortion, so that's why she's going to jail. But then the paragraph says, well, no, she pleaded guilty to concealing the body of the child, and that's the issue. That's why she's going to jail. So the same things are true, but omitting why makes it the lie.
Well, they buried the lead, right? I don't think anyone could possibly argue otherwise, right? The headline is very, it's very clickbaity, right? It's this, someone's going to jail because of an abortion or something, right? Like that's kind of what it's making you. It's what's leading you to believe by that little, that little sentence. And of course, the way we engage with media these days, how often, how many articles are you reading versus how many headlines are you reading, right? So,
Right.
so I can understand, obviously, like, yeah, that's like, yeah, you're trying to get you're trying to get them in. I get it. I get it. Now, what was interesting, and to set the stage from my perspective, with the way you posted that specific thing, right? So you had the headline, and then you had your comment of about New York Times lying, and then just underneath it, you also then posted that first paragraph. So
Mhm.
in that one photo, let's say, with the tagline of like, oh, they're lying, we had the headline and then what actually happened. So me, the reader, of both your sentence and then the paragraph and headline, I'm like, well, all the information's here, right?
Right.
So I'm seeing this. I'm like, so I think the question actually, I think all I posted, I think to start this debate ended up becoming, I think I said, where is the lie? I think that, and that's where we we kind of had one of our more heated, I think.
Right. Right.
So, you know, and of course now me and you, we had this conversation, and of course I don't remember everything about it. The
Yeah.
listeners, they weren't there for the conversation, so we can maybe rehash a little bit of it. But
Yeah.
I'll posit the question again, though, and this might be a more fun exercise hearing it, maybe in a real conversation. Like, in all honesty, like that article didn't lie.
Well, no, yeah, and I think and you're right. And most articles don't, and that's, I guess, is the problem. And it's something that I started seeing mostly surrounding Trump 3 years ago. Is that an article would come out about the guy, about the headline would say essentially that it would say half the information, and then in the article when I read it, I'm like, well, they either did a 180 on the headline or they just explained it further, so it almost didn't make the guy look so bad. And in this here, you start off by saying, like, and I'm reading between the lines too with this, because this to me is pitting liberals against conservatives. Obviously, the pro-life camp is made to look really bad all the time, like, oh, we just want to jail people for having a choice. And this does that very same thing. It inflames the pro-choicers against pro-life, but in like people formulate their article, or I'm sorry, their opinions on the headline. They're, like you said, they're not going into the article. They're just saying, oh, well, Nebraska is putting this girl in jail because she took a pill. And they're like, and then the pro-lifers like, no, 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 that's not why. That's BS. The article, so that's where the misleading nature of the headline, where people don't read past them. And that's another whole issue, right? A whole other bucket of worms, right?
For sure, for sure. So and I think I Facebook's whole reason to be, right, they want engagement, so they purposely put stuff in front of you that's going to that they know is going to further your engagement. So what do I see more frequently? I see things that I'm if I comment on your stuff a lot, right? So I'm
Mm,
seeing your stuff on the page a lot. So
yeah.
and of course they're very, very slightly maneuvering the comments. Like the top comment that I'm going to see in my quick scroll is also going to be something incendiary, right? Because that's what's going to get me. If you alone couldn't get me to respond, maybe you in that comment will. So
Yeah.
it's funny that we're having this discussion about media manipulation while in essence being manipulated by media.
By media.
Right, like, and being aware of it and still being okay with it's not the right word, but like
Right.
engaging with it anyway, right?
Well, that's one of the things too, is like, I think you and I, having grown up in a time that the internet didn't exist in the current state that it's in, allow us, for the most part, to separate, like, to be able to step back and realize that while we're talking about media manipulation, we are being manipulated by it every single day. Because yes, my feed is curated based on what I'm interacting with.
Exactly.
And I've even noticed on my Twitter feed, there's a lot of people that I used to see their stuff all the time, but I haven't recently because I haven't interacted with their posts, and it slowly started coming back. But yeah, and I noticed it too with Facebook. Like the same four people are interacting with the posts when I put them up,
Sure.
and I could name them. You could probably name them just as good as I can at this point, just because we know who's interacting.
Well, I mean, it definitely, and like, it's funny too because then now we have this our own little like pocket, sector here where we're getting the same 4 or 5 people, and it's usually it's a little more adversarial when other people jump on.
Mm.
I don't maybe know them as well as we don't know each other as well as me and you know each other, right? So
Right.
it's easier too when there's that extra layer of anonymity or not even anonymity, but just even like a little more of that separation. You can be like maybe more aggressive or more antagonistic, whereas if there's like a bit more of a friendly uh, existence that because we go way back, our interactions tend to be a little more level-headed
Right.
when other people pile on. But now, of course, but then you and me still will feed into that too, right? Because now there's like, there's a little bit of back and forth, and then there's people taking sides. So
Yeah.
it's funny how uh, we can both sit here and be like, yeah, we're pretty level-headed, but then 4, 8 comments in, 3 other people chime in, and suddenly like you're like, nah, fuck this
Yeah.
guy, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the unfortunate part too, is when I see certain people comment on, on the stuff that I'm posting, and then they're piling on either you or whoever else. I'm just like, that's not the point of this. Like,
Yeah, you
don't.
didn't need that to happen.
Yeah, like and obviously I think that I'm not responsible for what other people
No,
do on
never,
that post.
never.
Like, if whoever says a thing,
No,
that's their
that's on
bag of
them.
worms.
Absolutely.
But like, and so so people understand like where I'm coming from. Like, I would say Mike and I saw pretty much eye to eye with everything up until like just before COVID hit.
That's
Right.
right. Yeah, COVID represented a pretty big
Yeah.
inflection point, right?
Right. Um, and that, so, and if we went back and listened to our discussion years ago, it's basically us catching up on what we've been doing and agreeing on everything. And actually, it's funny because a post came up. It was so perfect. A post came up in my memories on Facebook today, and it was me essentially disparaging Trump over Charlottesville comments that he had made.
Oh, was that the post I made about Nazis? I think I saw that too. Was that the one where uh, so I said something along the lines of like if your worldview like includes protecting freedom of speech from Nazis, like just stop everything, stop breathing. I think is how, and it was 350 comments long because somehow that was that year. Arguing against Nazis was the most like crazy thing I could have said. Right? People have known my whole life defending their right to freedom of speech, which I understand, I get it, but it was this crazy topic, and you chimed in, and I think we might be talking about that.
No, we're not. But
Oh,
I
well,
kind
that
of
was
remember. So was I one of the people in that instance defending the Nazis' freedom of
no,
speech, or
no,
was
you were lockstep with me. This was back before. This was like when we were like completely
okay?
on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
So,
you did not defend a Nazi. Yeah.
well, and so here's a good place to like jump off on something that over the years I've just sort of come to realize, like, so freedom of speech is either you either have the freedom to say what you want to say or you don't. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that allowing someone, like, I won't endorse something that a Nazi says, but the only way that we can understand the bad ideas or the bad people in the world is to allow them to speak. Do I want them to speak? Certainly not. I think most of those people are idiots. But in order to understand who these people are, and if they want to out themselves publicly out loud, then I want them to be able to say what they want to say, because if we're going to set standards to speech, now I have to worry about those standards coming back on me if I ever want to like speak up. So if the pendulum swings another way and other people take power, can that law be used against me? Which is like one of the biggest topics. I guess 2021 was hate speech. So how do you define that? Like, how do we define what hateful speech is? And like I said, I know a lot of people in my camp, whatever that means, would defend hate speech, because again, you need to know who these people are. And then also, if we're defining hate speech now, can that be used against us later?
So I kind of love the way you started that sentence, or that answer you just said, where the notion of people outing themselves, or like, am I going to endorse them? No, but like if they're going to tell, like, it's a great way for them to broadcast who I shouldn't be friends with, right? Like I see that joke all the time whenever someone says like something really stupid, or someone drives by my house with like a racist ass sticker on their truck. I'm like, well, least I know I don't have to waste my time with that guy, you know. So there is merit to that. So like I definitely get it. And you know, kind of to your point about like if the pendulum should swing, and like obviously that's a real concern. And anytime I'm arguing like, nah, fuck, you know, fuck them. Like I clearly understand I live in a world where like, yeah, these things could happen, or as you also said, like you either have freedom of speech, or you kind of just don't, right? It's
Hmm.
hard to parse it out. But at the same token, like you know, going back to that post that I thought you were referring to, one of
Yeah.
the people mentioned when I was like, you know, shitting on Nazis, someone was like, well, who are we to say, you know, like who's right or wrong in this scenario, or like who's defining speech. And you know, there's this part of me that's like, well, I mean, you know, I don't know if you guys remember World War II, but I mean, a lot of people, you know, fought and died to eradicate these people, you know. So it's not like it's an unpopular opinion to say erase this. And I don't mean erase in the sense of like don't learn from, you know, the mistakes, or pretend it didn't exist. I mean like literally like don't entertain this like thought process. Don't allow this to propagate itself, because all that does is potentially, you know, awaken someone else's you know, bullshit that was like just under the surface, and now they have a someone that's backing them up right now. Suddenly it's okay, even if it was only that one person, but someone said, you know what, it's okay to be a fucking racist Nazi, um which it isn't, but like someone said it was, you know. And you end up in these situations where it like feeds on itself. I had a so funny story. I lived in kind of the south. I lived in the south end of Torrington, which is something of a not great part of town, and
Hmm.
very specifically the area I was in was real rough. And I was living on the second floor, and a person moved on to the third floor. My landlord told me to let him know if I heard anybody moving around up there. So I did. He's like, no, it's good. They officially moved in. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go knock on their door. I'm gonna let them know the parking situation. Trying to be a good neighbor, right? So I knock on the door, right? It opens the door, full on Nazi flag, right? I'm like, oh
Wow.
God, what did I just walk into? And he's like, hey man, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, you know, you know, I'm your neighbor. I'm just gonna let you know the, you know, parking situation. He's like, come on in. And I'm like, all right. So like I walk in, he hands me a beer. I used to smoke cigarettes at the time, so he hands me a cigarette. I'm having a cigarette with this guy. I'm like, what is fucking happening right now? I look over, his baby's in there, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I'm smoking in front of a baby. Like, what is happening, right? And anyway, I got to know him a little better, and sure enough, you know, he lived in like impoverished conditions in the South, didn't have a great support structure till he found some skinheads, and they made him feel welcome. And then he started getting Nazi tattoos, and then he moved to Connecticut, put up a flag, you know. And it's and that's when I say like don't suffer this. Like this is what I mean. Like you get these people that are now walking down South Main Street in Torrington with a Nazi flag.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. And like that,
It's a
but like,
long way to say that, but
right. No. But no, it's a good story to tell because it actually kind of leads into something else I've heard. And I don't know if I saw someone post this on Facebook or where I saw it, but some someone had said like if there's 9 Nazis at a table and you're sitting with them, there's 10 Nazis at the table. And I thought, wow, what a short-sighted way of like looking at this. Because what I thought of, well, just now was, Mike, why are you having a beer and smoking a cigarette with a Nazi? Shame, shame.
fair
But
point. Fair point.
but also, uh, you know, there's what's his name? Daryl Davis is someone who is he's like a blues singer or something like that, and he's black. He's a black man that went and hung out with Nazis with and essentially, I don't know if he went there with the intention of converting them, but he had a lot of people walk away from the Aryan Brotherhood because he just hung out with them and talked with them and was nice to them. And I just thought, well, that totally flies in the face of that narrative, because here's someone who's just wants to treat someone like a human, because maybe these people didn't have, you know, like I said, they fell in with the wrong crowd. They grew up in, you know, Appalachia, and they you know, these are the only people who give them the time of day,
Sure.
whatever it is.
It's funny you say that too. So one of the more like profound things I kind of stumbled on, right? So for context, right, and I don't have to tell you, but maybe whoever's listening, like I'm like the liberalist liberal that ever liberal, right? I'm like, you know, very very much right. So anyway, uh, I live in Northwest Connecticut, which is one of the few pockets in Connecticut that is still very much red. The overarching majority of the population here is still red. The town I live in specifically, uh, even more concentrated. So like I'm surrounded by a lot of opposing, let's say, opposing viewpoints,
Mm.
and uh, so my capacity in the brewery, I'm very customer facing, and in the 4 years, we've really became like a community like center. Like we are uh, one of the more happening things that's happened in Winston maybe ever, and uh, they love it. Like we're kind of a big deal. I cannot go to the grocery store without running into 10 people I know. Like I could run for mayor for this town, I swear to God. So
Don't do it.
yeah, I'm not gonna. Too much scandal, but but the point being that I, on paper, should not be friends with many of my patrons, right? And to the point though, where I'm so involved in their lives, like I'm up on birthdays, weddings, like life events. I'm like legitimately friends with people. Like we've exchanged numbers. They like legitimately love me. Now, mind you, we're talking guys in like their big lifted trucks, right? They're like landscapers, the salt of the earth, like, very conservative. And then I go to work with, I twist up my mustache, I put glitter in my beard, bro. I put eye makeup on, like I'm pushing it, and they love me. And that's the thing, right? So when it's a group of people you read on the internet, they're a nameless, easily hated person, right? When you've talked to them face to face, suddenly it's a real human. They're, with hopes and dreams, right? A complicated person that's actually probably fine, and
Right.
I have the most. I'm again probably the most liberal person that has the conservative group pass anywhere. Like I can walk into the most diviest dive bar and I have 6 friends there that got my back, and that's like what a weird scenario. But it speaks to that. Once you connected with someone, it stops being this nameless thing and it becomes, oh no, they're real people, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is my biggest problems, and it's a very important point to make, because the mainstream media, however you want to blanket that, would have people believe that we need to be constantly at war with one another. If you're liberal, if you're ultra liberal, leftist, whatever, you need to dislike everybody on the right because they want to, because they're fascists or whatever. Each side says the other is fascist. And but like as you say, these people, as conservative as they might be, God loving, shit kicking, 10-gallon hat wearing, they're you wouldn't normally probably stop and talk to them with your glittery mustache, but because you've built a reputation with them as being reliable, good, whatever it is, they have chosen to be a good person towards you, and all that other stuff doesn't matter, right? Now and again, this is the point. It's one of the reasons I do what I do, and I've started talking more and making more YouTube videos, is because we have to understand each person is a very complicated individual with an amalgamation of experiences. But 90% of the time, I'd say they're all good. Like I know, I mean, my street is filled with the most random collection of people. There's a guy right down the road. He's got a big flag, has a silencer on it, and it says, come and take it,
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
But the guy, and here's the thing is he's, I mean, they're super nice people, big Hispanic dude, right? And again, this is like, if I had seen that, I would have guessed what? It's an old guy with a big handlebar mustache, white guy, big pot belly drinking Budweiser, right? That's who lives there. No, it's someone totally different. And the
Yeah.
last time you and I spoke, Mike, this is where I took a deep dive into things, and and as a lot of people say that I've been radicalized, or I've taken a turn to whatever. Like, I started realizing there was people that were just people, as you say, that are very different from me. A lot of minorities, a lot of immigrants who toe the conservative line, as it were. And that got me interested in, like, well, what is being said? What is going on in the world that I was led to believe that, these people don't exist, or if you were conservative, you were a bad person. So I do like that you said that, because I think it's important that other people realize that people on that opposite side, they're just people like we are most of the time.
And so right, and that's where it gets complicated, right? So what's funny though is that now from my perspective, right? So all these people that I've kind of become friends with, right? I'm looking at it from kind of the same way, or maybe not. I should say maybe not from the same way they are. So maybe because I'm a little more introspective and I do engage in a lot of this kind of shenanigans online and debating, and me
Mm.
and you've done it a lot, and here I'm on on your show here. I don't even know if a lot of my patrons necessarily even have like think of it that way. They might not. They might even actually in some way might be one step a little bit better at this than me, because like they're not even thinking about the line that has been drawn, whereas I do, right?
Yeah.
I actually do think about it, and I'm like, while it doesn't bother me, I know it's there. Whereas like with them, I don't even think they think like that. I don't even think that line is a part of their brain space at all, which is like a weird thing to kind of wrap your head around, right? Because now it's like, oh, look at me being like, a man of the people, and it's like, yeah, but I'm also like recognizing like division, and I'm like, if for nothing else, there is an amount of perpetuating division even if you're just keeping it present, right? So I might not have to ever have a discussion with them about division. We've actually, and for lots of reasons, I don't bring up my political views while I'm at the brewery, obviously, but they don't have to look hard. They don't have to look too hard to find it, and they can make some guesses by looking at me.
Right.
but
Right.
but like they I don't even, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but like I've I've never even seen them to debate, right? They don't really get into that. So it's like it's an interesting thing where you could be someone who's like, yeah, man, like I'm here for it. We're all friends, but I'm thinking about where we're different. Like I'm thinking about it, whereas they're not. So
Well, and that to me, again, as 2020 hit, and we're told, okay, stay in your homes, don't leave, put your diaper on your face. We're saying like we're basically all I had was time. All I had was time to think about what. Okay, why did I hate Trump so much? Why did I hate conservatives so much? Um, and then I started realizing, well, is this just some like social conditioning? Is this like some sort of manipulation to make me? Because I thought the same thing. I thought I am obsessing over this way too much, like probably more so than this person. This person just seems to want to be left alone. Now they become very vocal when they do open their mouth. That good old boy, like not my small town, whatever the fuck, you know. So, but like, you know, it's just like it's a different side of the same coin in a way, like where I used to obsess over race and political affiliation and all that. Now it's just more like I'd rather just see how this person treats me as an individual. Like I don't even have to bring that up. Sure, I could make my assumptions, but that's me assuming one thing, but it could be another.
For
So
sure.
I mean that's essentially what happened, was just kind of going down this rabbit hole of, am I being more judgmental than a lot of these people who I just you were making assumptions about?
So
And
now
again, good.
I was to say now, admittedly, like to this point where we're here we are, we're almost getting to an agreement. I have to throw in a little wrench here. So now
Do it.
the thing that struck me as probably the moment where we diverged. If I The line might be a little blurry, but the I think the moment where it became very clear that something about you started to like reconcile the world differently than me.
Mm,
Uh, Rittenhouse, right? There was a lot of the fallout from Kyle Rittenhouse, and I
yeah.
remember, you. I think initially I read it as you defending him, and of course, like in hindsight and like looking back, it wasn't so much that you were defending; it was just more like you were like, I'm trying to understand the facts, right? And you were kind of presenting the story
Right.
as best we could to tell how it happened, and but by doing that, even by doing that, it felt like we're trying to defend this guy, and I'm like, what a weird take for Tom Shaggy of all people. Like I did not expect him, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, the what this kind of speaks to, right? Again, is like there's this division, right? So there's these assumptions, right? I'm assuming a thing about you, and then you
Right.
post this thing that's opposite of my assumption. Now there's a problem, but I've invented both halves of this problem.
Right. Right. Right, because at that point, I probably had done, for everyone looking on Facebook, I had done a 180 on it, like previous things that I posted, and I remember getting messages from mutuals that we have saying, "Whoa, dude, what is this all about?"
I
Like
was getting
a month
messages
ago, yeah.
about it. Like,
And that's, hey, and that's the thing is, I don't, and I took a big break from Facebook because it was really wearing on me in just a mental way. I needed to step away from it, and I had like given up. And after being on Twitter a little bit more, and then also doing a lot of stuff on YouTube, I said, you know what, I'm just going to come back to it because I I need to, I don't know, I need to be able to talk about this stuff, and I need to be able to engage with it and not just let people bother me all the time, because I'm also inventing, people's assumptions about me, right? And while I'm sure I've lost friends from high school, or whatever, it's they don't really understand like where I'm coming from with this, because in Rittenhouse for me was another big one, because as I started, I watched probably every bit of coverage on that trial as I possibly could, because I really wanted to understand like what happened, what do I agree with, what do I disagree with, because I grew up with firearms. I handled firearms my whole life. My dad had them in the house. Um, you know, I did my gun safety. I've had my hunting license, all that sort of thing. Um, gun weapons are very different now, even in the 20 years since I really handled them. And it's in that case was, again, it was another example of to me, right, that there's a lot of headline manipulation, and I don't know if fact manipulation is is the is the right word, but you know, and I'll just give you an explanation, because it's been so long since I even talked about that. Do I think he should have been there? No, I think it was a bad idea for him to be there. Do I think he handled himself in the best possible way given the circumstances? Yes.
oh,
And
okay.
that's, I think him, walking around and doing what he was doing with his firearm, I think that what the situation that he was in, I think people left him little to no choice um, to defend himself the way he did. And I don't, again, how the media framed him, I think was wrong. I think the media was totally biased against him and didn't present his case in a fair manner, which is really became my problem with it.
And it's not even to say that I'm unsympathetic to that notion, right? Of like, the media did definitely rally against him, and like he's a kid, right? He was 17 years old or whatever, or
Yeah.
he was young.
Yeah, he was
Uh,
17 at the time, I believe.
so obviously, like, yeah, I can definitely understand that. You know, not that we have to like solve the world's problems related, related to Rittenhouse, but like at the end of the day, I think the problem being that like because he could have been anywhere in the world and he inserted himself there. It's hard to even give him like any kind of like yeah, well, it went south, but like you did the best you could. It's hard to do that when it's like, the best thing, it was, it's easier than driving somewhere, putting yourself in harm's way, staying home. I do it all the time. I'm doing it right now.
Right.
Like no hands.
Well, but in the same token, and this is where I think people have to be fair on both sides, is that we can say that about Rittenhouse, and we could have said that a dozen times about a lot of the riots that happened following all that, like especially after like George Floyd, the summer of love they call it, where a lot of cities were just getting burned down by um, well, whoever the case was, whether it was Antifa that was there, Black Lives Matter, the people counter protesting them, like all that stuff. Like we could say that about both groups. Just stay home. You don't need to involve yourself in this and burn someone's business down. Rittenhouse, you don't need to go to a place you don't belong with a firearm and now put yourself in a place that you have to defend yourself. And
Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I
Go
was
ahead.
so one of the more complicated things that I struggle with when because it's hard not to accidentally like misspeak, and a lot of it comes, it's like, who am I, right? Who am I, privileged white guy, to ever say anything about anything, right? But like, it's one of those things where I always go back to, it's like it's difficult to not, inherently want to side with an oppressed group, right? So when we talk about, so Rittenhouse could have stayed home, yes, and like could have, Black Lives Matter, protesters, could they have stayed home? Yes. At the same token, like getting out there and speaking out against oppression, and if you don't want to buy into like oppression, like whatever it is, but like let's face it, like race is a thing, it exists, right? It's a problem, and it has been for a long time, right? And it's hard for me to ever like listen to, and I know I hate, like, here I am on the internet, I'm about to say some shit, but it's like I hate to be that person that's like, oh yeah, white guy, tell me how okay it is for the non-white experience, and like you just can't speak to that. And individuals will experience different things throughout their lives, right? But by and large, if you look back through nation's history, like people of color have had a harder time baseline, right? And during this whole, like, that summer of love, I didn't know they called it that, but like during that time there was like a lot, and because maybe people were at home and on the internet a lot, but there was this whole thing about like the notion of like white privilege and what does that even mean, and a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings and all this stuff. And and it all just goes back to, it's like, I get it, like you individually didn't have um a cheat code, like you as a white person had to work hard, like Tom, I don't know if you remember, man, like I grew up very poor.
Oh yeah.
like
No, I remember. Yeah.
like very poor, right?
Mhm.
And now I am like definitely not that. Like I'm doing extremely well for myself. I'm kind of the exception, not the rule, right? I jumped like two socioeconomic classes, and that's not common.
I'm
So,
proud of you, man. You've done really good for yourself.
and I
For sure.
appreciate it. Thank you. And but like I would still be the first to say, man, like a lot of it was luck, and a lot of it came from the fact that I wasn't like as likely to get fucking arrested for doing the same shit someone else would if they were a different color than me. And that's that's like really a thing. And that became such an incendiary, like, talking point, and that really led to this, division. The more people pushed for like, no, this is real. Like you, it's a problem, and people are like, no way, man. I worked for everything I had. It's like, yeah, so the fuck did I. Like I get it. You
But
know.
what is it? But there's not enough talk about, like, I don't doubt that I could have privilege as a white person, but you know, like I'll tell you, I was pretty privileged to be poor at one point and have and have a child out of wedlock. Like no one talks about that kind of privilege. No one talks about female privilege.
Sure.
There's a lot of privileges I think that
Right,
people
right.
have that,
You're
and I almost don't believe. And again, I there's been advantages and disadvantages to a lot of things, and even speaking, like when you go and look at some of these African American conservatives, Hispanic conservatives, and you listen to their stories, like they don't, it's not something that they bring up or care about, because, well, at least from what I'm gathering, they're like, I did this on my own. Like I never felt that I was, pushed aside because a white guy came in and took my job or something like that. Um, and I've said, I think before on like Facebook posts, like there seems to be this perpetuation of being a victim, in one way or another on the left, and then there's, I don't want to say it's anti-victim on the right, because I think conservatives play victim in many other ways, but
Oh, 100%.
um,
Yes.
as far as like skin color goes, I don't hear it as something that people speak out against. And the honest, it's the exact opposite, where like recently the whole affirmative action thing was overturned at some of these high level colleges, and there's black influencers that are talking about how this is a good thing, that they are now being, that people are going to be entered in to colleges based on actual test scores, rather than, oh, because we need to put you in there. And he even gives examples of how some of these admissions officers would talk um, about some of the applicants, like very, very dated language, how they would talk about them.
Sure.
And I have the video on TikTok. I don't have it here, but it was it was very telling. I don't know. What's your thoughts on the affirmative action thing?
Yeah, so it's funny. It's like I'm always so hesitant to like get this like specific about about race, right? It's such a hard thing. So here's the thing. Like no, it's hard to arrive at a solution that's perfect. Like there's always pros and cons to like every decision that's ever made, right? And so when it comes to something like affirmative action, the like a lot of things our government has done, it's like, yeah, the heart was in the right place. You know, the intention, right, is like this is going to hopefully mitigate exclusion based on, you know, uh, race or skin color, what have you. So that was kind of like it, now correct me if I'm wrong, but like that was like kind of if we're going to distill it down to its like very basic element, that was kind of the idea, right? We don't want to have exclusionary tactics
Right.
towards you know, groups of people.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, like the flip side of that, like, well, now we have inclusionary tactics based on like skin color and race and what have you. It's like, okay, yes, this does give people an opportunity, but now it the like reaction to that becomes a problem between you and me and everyone listening now. I guess I'm a big I'm a big proponent of like, yeah, merit, man, merit's important. So like, not to like
Don't
suddenly
say that too loud. Your liberal friends will kill you.
I know, right? So, you know,
Just
not to
kidding.
make this not to make this story about, you know, me right now, but like, bro, like I didn't go to college. Or well, I mean, I did some college courses, but I didn't do the traditional like 4-year thing, right? I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And now, you know, I work as an engineer. I'm sitting in a room with people with PhDs, right? And I'm like, they're my contemporaries. I'm like, I know my shit, you know. And it's like I did it because I put my head down, I worked hard, I learned, and you know, here I am, right? So I'm sitting in this room based on my merit, not my credentials. And you know, I've had a lot of colleagues that have come and gone that you know they a lot of why they got there was based maybe a little bit more on credentials than ability, and that's you know that's the you know professional world, right? It's what it is. So I'm very sensitive to the notion of like yeah if you are good enough and you can do it like do it like and you when you earn it that's great and that's awesome. So like I'm a big proponent of merit. So you know, no one isolate this, you know, but it's like, is getting rid of like, you know, affirmative action when it comes to college is like a net better. I mean, yes, in the sense that I think all you're doing is continually shining a spotlight on, you know, the problem instead of, you know, solving it. Because let's face it, affirmative action doesn't solve the problem. It's a band-aid at best. And all it does is piss people off, right? Like it just made people mad, you know. I'm whether you know whether you're white, black, what have you, like people were getting mad about it. So yeah, my you know my my takeaway is like this is probably for the best, but you know I don't want to sound like I want to be taking away from anybody either. If that if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, but and that's the thing is, and I think that's part of the problem is like, and this is where maybe I've been a little bit more unapologetic with how I talk. I, you know, you speaking out your mind on something shouldn't be a contentious thing. Like you should be able to say what you said without having to, you know, annotate every line, you know. And I people get clipped out of context and I'm not doing that and I'm, you know, it would never be my intention. If someone else did it, you shouldn't fucking do that because it's dishonest and stupid. But like I mean, being for a like sort of a merit-based system is not bad and there's even been data that I've seen that said, you know, affirmative action was essentially hurting certain demographics because they were you're putting someone in, let's say, an Ivy League school that didn't have any business being there. And when they fail out of that program or they don't perform to the standard they're supposed to, it's a whole other thing, you know? So there's, and of course that people are going to be mad about it because race has become a defining thing for a lot of people out there. Like I am black and I'm beautiful, like or whatever it is, or you know I'm white and I'm whatever it is. I don't care.
Okay,
Um,
before so I don't lose this thought. So here's
yeah.
a good point to what you just said. Did you ever see that documentary that I think it was Chris Rock of all people? I think he like was like the producer, maybe he directed it, but it was his like brainchild. He did this entire documentary about hair, specifically how black people's hair, the beauty standard, a lot of times ends up being more closely mirrored after white people. There's this entire like industry of you know cosmetics that are engineered to make you know a black person's hair look more like a white person's hair or wigs or you know these extensions, right? It's like for some reason, you know, a white woman's hair has become like the like baseline mark of beauty, and that what's interesting about that is you've probably never even actually consciously thought that. And like I don't think I ever did either until like someone pointed it out to me or until I kind of watched that documentary. But it's like, what a weird thing. But now think about how many other things you might interact with in the world that also do that, that you don't even give a second thought, right? And that's where this weird race thing happens, where it's like there's a lot of stuff that you interact with on a daily basis that is actually seated in some kind of like race division that you just like have already, oh, that's it, that's whatever, that's what we do now, you know. So like what a weird thing. So anyway, I didn't want to like derail what you were saying, but like, you know, the notion of like, beauty standards or just societal norms in general, it's hard to even have a consistent like agreement on what is, considered, beautiful or okay or what have you. Like it's unfortunate that someone should feel pressured to go against, their sort of natural look to appeal to what's more mainstream, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know, man. I've tried to really look past the race stuff recently. I think it was a big part of who I was a while ago, or maybe not. I don't know. But I felt my opinions on things were widely surrounded on that, and not necessarily like what the person was doing or who they are. I mean, there's certainly a lot of weird fashion trends out there, um, but but I don't know. There's I don't know where to go with that. I don't know where to pull that thread.
Did I derail the entire thing?
No, it's okay. I kind of forgot where I was before, but no, I mean your point taken. I just think the idea of race division and even sex division nowadays is just kind of well, I think, and I was one of the people that I see in the chat. Him and I've talked a lot. I think division in sex is like the last bastion of I don't want to say discrimination, but like division of sex is probably the only thing that's acceptable nowadays because of certain, and even that's trying to be eroded. And I'm sure that's a whole discussion we can get into. Dividing up men and women's sports when it comes to trans men and women kind of crossing the lines into the other void. But it's probably, no one thinks twice about, men and women's bathroom. Like, oh, well, we don't want men in the women's bathroom. We don't want women in the men's bathroom. It just seems, an appropriate thing. Whereas race nowadays, I feel is something that people are largely trying to look past. And even, some celebrities have said like, we don't need to bring up, Black history because it's just history. Like, why do we have to divide those things up?
And it's like yeah, absolutely. I don't think like that specific like very small piece of that like agreed, right? I don't think anyone would argue against like, yeah, it's just history, right? Or uh, the purpose like it's hard to be inclusive of everything if you're like frequently focusing on any one thing. The problem being though is that one of the analogies, and like I might be a little clumsy with this right now because I'm paraphrasing what have you, but it's like,
Yeah.
if your roof was on fire right now and the fire department showed up, you know, uh, you're not. No one's going to be like, well, let's make sure we get water on like everybody's roof. No, we're going to get water on the fire, right? We're going to address the problem that's on hand. So when it comes to something like this was a little bit more maybe relevant to like Black Lives Matter when people were saying like, well, all lives matter. Well, it's like, yes, of course all lives matter, but bro, we're dealing with this right now. This is where the fire is. Like you're not, we're going to put all of the fire engines on this fire because it's on fire, And so I think, to your point, like, Black History Month, it's like, well, yeah, it is history, but like, at the same token, until, we've maybe achieved true equality, I'm not inclined to start putting water on the other roofs yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Do you think everything needs to be inclusive?
Ooh, good question. So, well, I define everything, I guess. Interesting. Okay, huh? Uh, well, do I feel like society should be inclusive? Like, well, yes. Huh?
Well, there's a big push nowadays that, every space is for everyone.
Okay.
Is there no is there no barrier to entry for anything? Is it just we so Hollywood's a good example of I think inclusion gone wrong. I think a lot of the adaptations or the remakes of things have abandoned old formulas to tell a modern story and make sure it includes all walks of life. And this is, again, it's not to say that we can't have stories that include a lot of different people, but it's like the girl boss trope has gone way out of control to the point where we've left behind real girl bosses in the past, someone like Ellen Ripley or Sarah Connor, or pick any of those old school like badasses, for something like She-Hulk, or like even the new, like watching the press runs for the new Snow White movie is like mind numbing, because they're like, oh, this isn't 1937 anymore. We're gonna tell a story where there's no love story, and it's like, what? Like, did you even watch the original Snow White? Like, I mean, say what you want about the 1930s, like you're talking about rewriting an entire story. So I get, like, is inclusion, is it hurting things, or should we just continue on this path of everything? We just need to include everyone and everything.
Okay, so I wonder. So I've not actually maybe kind of reconciled it exactly that way, right? So I would say, like, I feel like as time goes on, and this is actually probably true. We can almost certainly like chart it like factually, like we become more homogenous, right? That I think that's just kind of the natural state of things, right? And like, um, if we were, there's probably a model, some biologist out there, right? Probably has a model of what humans are going to be looking like 100 years from now, and we're probably all going to be like probably a little darker, probably gonna be a little bit of nice shade of brown, right? I think, I suspect that that is just sort of the natural way of things. Now, the nature of like should or shouldn't, like that's a good one. So when it comes to having like, I guess, like equal opportunity or not, being lack of prejudice, like that kind of inclusion is important, right? The inclusion of like writing a story that, you have, every story has to include, a gay person, a trans person, a straight person, what have you. That's probably like, I would say it's probably less necessary. It's also a little bit less important. Like, not to say that pop culture doesn't also shape regular culture, but like, yeah, I mean, would I prefer to watch a story that's genuine, independent of who's in it, who's being represented? Yeah, of course. I want like something that's, something that's artful, something that speaks to me. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that would be my preferred method. Um, if the path forward to arrive at, say, less prejudice and more, a more inclusive society requires pop culture to present it, yeah, then maybe it is. Maybe it is the correct. Maybe it's the correct way. Uh, like you hear this word like, oh, they're normalizing blank as almost like a bad thing, right? Like normalizing. I mean, you go to any point in history, right? Like, remember when most people went to church every Sunday, and now, like, I mean, you could say it's pretty normal not to, right? That there was a time where that was going to undo the very fabric of our nation, right? Like that, you godless heathens, but like, you know, uh, whatever. I don't believe in God, like whatever, It's like, and we're fine. Everyone's fine. So, um, yeah. So maybe a long way of saying, like, I think it's important to have. I grew up watching comic books, right? Or watching comic book, or reading comic books, and now I get to watch these comic book people be on, TV and whatever. And like my whole life,
Mhm.
I've had heroes that looked like me, and like they're, I don't know what the first openly gay superhero was, but I bet it wasn't. It was probably pretty recent, So I feel like, yeah, your childhood should be able to have the same
But what
heroes that
is the? Let me ask you that, because like that's a good point. I mean, what does the first openly gay superhero have to do with anything? Like, is that what has the the fact that Superman is straight was not his defining characteristic. Like most superheroes,
I.
their defining characteristic is is they are willing to do what others are unwilling to do, to lay their life on the line for someone else, to do a selfish act. Like, I don't care if some DC character or all these DC characters are in fact gay. It doesn't make any difference to me. Like, and I guess that's the issue that a lot of people have, is like, if that's your focal point, you're going to have a very short run of comics, because there's like, what are they doing that's defining them as a superhero? What?
So I think maybe instead of thinking of it as the defining characteristic, think of it as like, hey, this person, this person looks like me, right? It's like, so a good example, similar to kind of what we're saying, like, that the Little Mermaid remake with Ariel being black instead of white, right? It's like, oh, look, you have a Disney princess that now is representative of like of your appearance. Like, it might seem minor, but like, if you don't have
Yeah,
a
but Princess and the Frog was like 15 years ago.
okay, fair enough. But like, but people freaked out, and I'm not saying like that's really the part we should focus on, but like, I don't know, man. Like, if I've kind of, I might even have said this to you before in like some random comment, but it's like, usually if you don't have a problem with like the way people are represented, it's probably because you were well represented your entire life. I guess there's a bit of this like, white straight male baseline, right? And I guess maybe we're just a bigger demographic, so we spend the most money, I guess. I don't know. But like, um there's this like, it feels like the baseline is what's going to appeal to the white male, right? So whether it's a hero that you can model yourself after, or something that exists in the male gaze so that you can, like, lust after, right? It's like those seem to be the two most common things, right? If you look at comics in the 90s, right? It's like everything's TNA and like superpower fantasies. And so I think,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think like, yeah, you know what, maybe, yeah, have like a young black female lead, like have Iron Man, have Thor be a woman for a little while. Like, that's cool. Like, let everyone else get a crack at being the hero. Let this 6-year-old imagine themselves being this person, right? Like, look at, like, let that person imprint themselves on them. Like,
Yeah, but that, by that logic, you wouldn't have any black people as a fan of comics. Like, I mean, I'm talking to a guy tomorrow who started his own comic book universe, and he's like, his favorite, I'm pretty sure his favorite superhero was Batman. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, talk about straight white male. You know what I mean? Like, so if that were the case, and this is what I'm not attacking you, man. Like, I'm just trying to, like, I always think about these things when the subject comes up. Like, if that is the case, you wouldn't have people of color or another gender enjoying these stories. They're looking past, because that when these came out, it was never, oh, we have a new straight white male superhero. Like, now that's how it's marketed. We have a black Little Mermaid. Like, that's how they put these forward. The marketing for these things, the first step is identity, who they are, skin wise, gender wise, or sexual orientation. So you're teaching kids that is the most important thing. Whereas before, it wasn't that. It was, what are they doing to help other people? Who are they laying on the line? And here's a very weird example. I was reading Corduroy to my son. And the little girl in that, the family, that's a little girl and the mom, is like, they're brown. Like, it's not a little white girl. I just thought, wow, how old is this book? And it's a timeless book. People still read it. It's a great little story to tell your kids at night. And I'm like, this is, like, this shit's been happening for years. That people have been represented. Again, Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley. These are two, and even Gina Davis in A League of Their Own.
oh, hell yeah.
Like, I mean, they're represented as like strong characters. Like, would I want to be Sarah Connor? Fuck yeah, dude. I want to be like, I want to be able to step up and like learn how to use those guns, and like the human side of her, of whatever that internal conflict was, trying to reconcile her as like a human versus being, I need to be the mother of of the leader of the resistance. I need to train him. I need to overcome the, like, how that story is so much more engaging than what's being put out there now. It's just, I got to be strong and I got to take on all the toxic male traits that, we're led to believe are toxic. And that's how we become the girl boss. That is one of the issues I have with now. And that's why I think like inclusion and representation is like the normalization of it is actually hurting a lot of the stuff as far as like Hollywood and comics goes.
Sure.
It's like we're just diluting what it meant to be these people originally.
Do you think, like, I would say, like, it's probably worth considering, right? That a lot of this is reactionary, right? Like, we've gone a long time of maybe, um, okay, so it's like twofold, right? So there's like the overarching, like, kind of what you were saying, right? Like, yeah, there has been representation. Obviously, it's not like it's been completely devoid of any kind of representation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but like, to it would also be incorrect to say that like it hasn't skewed a little bit towards, it's obviously skewed a little bit towards people like you and me, right? Like, it's just, let's face it, like if we were to look at the grand scheme of popular culture, it skews a little more towards, what we look like. So, you know w- not to use this like divisive term, but like, now that, this whole like look thing, right? But like this nature of like, maybe let's address some of this disparity, right? let's
Mm-hmm.
let's let's address some of this lack of inclusion. It's probably not going to be like this forever. It's probably going to be like this long enough to kind of break through the dissension, and then it probably just becomes like it kind of just becomes again like it was before, right? It just becomes normal in the sense that the main character now, the lead isn't how they identify, sexually or gender wise. It just becomes what they do and what they stand for. But I feel like we're just at this moment, and it's like it feels silly to be having it now because it's 2023. It's like we're doing it now. But like I feel like we're just at this moment where we just have to kind of, we're breaking through, maybe clumsily, maybe not in the best way. Maybe we're using a hammer where, a needle was correct, but like, we're breaking through some of those uh, barriers that were preventing people from having, this kind of representation. So, you know, a sometimes the clapback is worse than it needs to be. It's like, the world forever brought a knife, and now we're bringing a gun. I guess, if that, for lack of
Right.
better
Well, I
term.
think too, like I think you're right. I think there's a part of it that a lot of the backlash is reactionary, and one of the examples I give is like Strange Worlds was Strange World was a Disney movie that a lot of people I think were disparaging because they talked about how I think the character was like the media surrounding it was we have our first like non-binary like character in a movie. And or like maybe his parents were like I don't know, I think his parents were like separated, but like then the mom had like a girlfriend or something. Whatever it wasn't apparent in the movie when I watched it, and the movie is actually quite good. And I think the reactionary content surrounding it hurt the movie overall, or like the messaging and the marketing behind it being like leading with the identity politics was like maybe hurt at the box office. When I thought, man, that sucks because this is actually a good film, and it discusses the relationship between a dad and his son, and then the grandfather and his son. Like that three-tier, three generations of men in a family, and how they sort of divert paths. One felt abandoned, and then the other felt that they were leading a life that they didn't want to lead. And I'm like, oh, what a great story, because it's a story that people can actually identify with, where the patriarch of the family expects a certain thing, and maybe he goes off to try and provide for his family, but he's not really around. So then the son wants to be present and have his son involved with his life, but the son doesn't like to do that thing. So then all of a sudden he's, you know what I mean? Like, it's relatable on so many levels, and you don't even have to be a guy to actually relate to that story. You know what I mean? And that's where I think we're trying to first of all, we're trying to reuse heroes that have already been used, and just race swapping them. So it's like, okay, we got Superman, let's have black Superman. We got Batman, let's do black Batman. We got whatever it is. We have Ariel, let's make black Ariel. Like, how about let's just make someone new. Let's make a new character. And I hear this a lot from many people, is like, let's make new characters. Let's not just reuse old ones. Let's not tokenize. Let's just make them a brand new person. You kind of get where I'm coming from that. Like when you're leading with a certain message, it loses you lose the ability to tell a story off the bat.
Well,
And
obviously, there's a fear there of like, you're doing it. I don't think I'm gonna arrive at the right word, but it's like it can maybe potentially end up disingenuous, right? It's like you're not. This story might not be meaningful to you, or this character might not be meaningful. Not you, the receiver, but actually like the creator, right? Like there's you.
Mhm.
I'm sure this has happened, right? Because like let's face it, the Hollywood pop culture machine is it's all about money, right? So
Yeah.
there's going to be a non-zero part of this that's it's disingenuous. It's meant to pander to that very notion, right? It's like you actually kind of touched on it, like let's not tokenize. Like, yeah, there's unfortunately going to be an amount of that, and I think that's unavoidable. But it's even if we weren't in the scenario of like, yeah, let's be let's be inclusive for better or for worse. Let's be all inclusive. There was always kind of this tokenizing, pandering nature to to pop culture, to any or not even just pop culture, to any way to make a dollar, right? If there's somebody out there that'll see, a hole to fill to make money, like you better believe it. That's exactly what's gonna happen. So like this might even be a kind of opposing what I was saying earlier, where there this might it I was probably being almost a little too like pie in the sky, like almost naive in a way where I could pin, you know, pop culture as a way of like social improvement. Like, yeah, everything is working towards various goals at every given moment, but let's face it, like it's not so simple to just be like, well, we have a black Ariel, racism solved. Like that's just not how it works, right? It's a slow and ugly process, right?
But yeah, and you know, I think pandering to the audience can be bad. And I think in that case, I don't think racism is why that movie did poorly. I think it's because it's not what people wanted, like I think you could tell that story without telling it as Ariel. It could have been any other thing. From what I didn't watch it, and not
Yeah.
because not because I hate black people, but because I just don't have any I didn't have any desire to watch like
I,
just a movie that was already perfect in my eyes. Like
yeah,
there's
I don't have kids either. I'm not like admittedly, I'm not really going on
right.
to watch a lot of these Disney movies, especially these live action remakes. Like, eh, you know. But no, you bring up a good point though. Like now you also get to if now it could be hard to even speak critically of it, right? Because now it's like, well, what's your agenda, right? Like, why are you speaking critically of this? It's like it might actually just be based on the merit of the story, right? But it's easy to get lumped into like, oh, are you trying to be like regressive? Are you trying not to allow for um, societal progression here? Like, yeah, it becomes a whole mess, doesn't
Well,
it?
and honestly, that's one of the points that like why I might post something that's a touch inflammatory is because I should be able to bring this particular article to light about the deceiving nature of the headline versus what the content of the article is. Um, I think the first comment on there was essentially like it was someone else we went to high school with younger than us was like, well, are you posting this? Like, do you think that you have the right to comment on like yes, I do. Unfortunately, that's another place that we've gotten to, Mike, is that because, and as you would say, I'm a straight white male, I can't have opinions on things like abortion or trans men playing in women's sports, or trans men playing in men's sports, or whatever it is. Like, I can absolutely have a discussion on it. I can absolutely have an opinion on it. Now, whether or not people want to take that for anything is up to them, but people at one point or another sat down just like this. Like you and I could have been having a beer and something came on the TV. And I said, oh, I don't think Leah Thomas should be competing against women. And then we could have a discussion that didn't maybe end in you throwing a beer in my face. You know what I mean? It's just like you just talk about stuff or you learn. Maybe after that beer, you and I don't have beers anymore because you don't want to talk to me, right? Like I don't know how many more cigarettes you smoked with your neighbor upstairs. Probably not many, if any.
As few as
You know what I
possible.
mean? Right. So like, but it's one of those things like I should always be able to, like, nothing should be off limits because, whether or not people want to think about it, and we'll just kind of sidestep to, like, let's say the abortion thing. Like, I don't, I can have an opinion on it because in some regards it does affect me if for some reason I had gotten someone pregnant. Now, has my opinion changed on it over the years? Absolutely. Am I a full on pro lifer? No. I understand where people are coming from. I understand where the pro life camp is rooted. I understand why they believe what they believe, and I don't discount their point. Um, I mean, my son, my younger son was born at 25 weeks, 2 days.
Wow.
There are
That was that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he was born very, very early. You wouldn't know it now looking at him.
Sure.
But there's people, not a lot of them, who are arguing for abortion at, past that point. And I think that is an awful position to have. And this particular one with the article, I think the girl was in her 3rd trimester. And like that, to me, like you are absolutely dancing with the notion of murder at that point, because that is a totally separate human. You can absolutely make the argument with maybe within the 1st trimester, but like to me, I'm like 8 weeks, and that's like it for me. You're really pushing it. But that whole thing has changed so many times, and maybe that opinion accelerated, obviously as I became a father.
Sure.
My son was born so early, and then as I sort of took a deep dive into more conservative politics. But like, you and I should be able to have that discussion, and I would hope that you understand where I'm coming from with something like that. Like, if you want to argue that you can have abortion up until the day the child is born, that's your thing, and you can defend it all you want. I, on the other hand, won't. But I can still recognize you as a person, just like,
It's funny because, like, again, kind of going back to how we kind of started this whole thing, right? So, I like to be, a little like poke the bear a little bit. I like to, stir the pot, much like you.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are, talking face to face, right? And even when you were still like kind of in town, or even the last couple times we've seen each other, which was kind of post your sort of change for, for what it's worth, we still have
Right.
like perfectly, like, when we're in the same room or in the same virtual room, it's
Mhm.
still, it's a perfectly acceptable. It reminds me a lot of it's like it's never changed, right? Our ability to converse is the same as it's always been.
Right.
Now, tomorrow you might post something stupid and I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But like, but like, right. So yes. So short answer, of course, I can definitely understand where you're coming from, and like, my, we don't have to necessarily get into my opinions on abortion necessarily, but like, yeah, like, you could probably make some guesses as to how I feel about it. But you your bigger point here, right? It's become nigh impossible to discuss. It's such a hot button issue, and obviously there's a lot of women in my life that are important to me, and like, you know, here's the deal, right? Like, it's easy to kind of take the stance that, like, why there's like this big sensitivity to say something like, oh, straight white guy, like, who are you to have an opinion on abortion? And the I don't think we're telling any stories out of school here. Like, the genesis of that thought, right, is that if we look at our political landscape, it's like you have these very out of touch older white men that don't even know how to turn on a computer, saying things like, can't you just swallow a camera to, like, look at your reproductive system instead of going to a gynecologist? And these are the people that are making laws related to your reproductive health and choice, so
But well, okay, I'm going to pause you there. You got to I think it's disingenuous to call it reproductive health when you're talking about
fair, fine,
when you're talking about, an
okay,
abortion.
fair enough. Your reproductive um, decisions, right? So I guess it only becomes a matter of health when there's a situation, right? If, like, there's danger to the mom, and there's that's obviously part of it too. But I won't hammer that point home so hard that we have to, like, get hung up on it. But like, yeah, but the point being, if a guy who is actually, in some amount responsible for policy, can say something like that, like, oh, just swallow a camera, like, have you ever, like, seen a human body? It's just like, and you're gonna weigh in on this right now.
Right.
So I think that that's like a lot of the genesis where, and let's face it, like, what was it? You had to. It wasn't until like what 1970 that a woman could get a credit card without her husband signing for it. It's like you, you can't just take like this one thing, right? It's like the context of everything, right? Women had to fight to get the right to vote, right? That wasn't given, in the beginning. And then like yeah, the credit card thing I just mentioned, and um,
Here's an interesting counterpoint to that too. That and again, these are all sides that I've tried to like look at through the years, and you can think about it or not. Like women's suffrage is not something that was universally accepted. Like it's something that's a lot of women fought against during its time. So I mean, I'm not saying like, do I want the right for women to have the right to vote? Sure, of course. Like I'm not saying they're not people, but I think it's important to consider the fact that it wasn't just 100% of women being like, we need to vote. Like there is a part of that there's a decent sect
yeah,
of women who didn't
is it
who didn't
is
want that.
is it a worthwhile like? Is it even worthwhile though to consider that there were some people that were against it? You know what I mean? It's like saying like there was some number of black people that were pro slavery. You know what I mean? Like
Because there's probably a very similar proportion of women who are against like abortion, right? It's not all men who are like, you have to give birth to that child. There's women who are out there, and a fairly large portion of them who are saying,
there's women in my life that are anti-abortion. Like so, I definitely get that. I guess I just meant more like you know just because women are against something that's like very much their domain, like doesn't mean it's not fair to argue that like maybe more women should be a part of this decision making process, right? Like more women should be involved in this policy creation. Now, you could argue, yes, women vote, so they are a part of that decision making policy. But
right.
let's face it, it's not a straight line, right? You do the best you can, but like, yeah, I agree. Yeah, like it's better to say there's Americans that are for and there's Americans that are against abortion, right? It's better to say it that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also fair to say that um, you know, it's maybe not the best thing when it's six dudes sitting at a table signing paperwork talking
Well,
about
no, there's never been a more diverse Congress right now, and it's not all men doing that. And I think, and largely the whole idea behind the, the Roe v. Wade overturn was to just return the the authority back to the states to make the decision on their own, because not a whole lot changed in many areas. And I mean, I'm sure you could guess in the places that it's the worst, which again I don't necessarily agree with, but almost every state, even in the South, protects the mother if there is some life threatening thing. Again, and this is where I started thinking, like, if we're going to return power to the states to make these laws on their own, well, I mean, maybe there's something to be said for understanding the value of human life, and even also knowing where you probably should and should not live.
sure,
I know that's a very flippant way of like
you're not
saying
right.
it, but
Obviously, that is definitely part of it. Obviously, the implication there is if you're already there, it's not so easy to just leave, right? But
right,
yes, like I have no intentions of moving to Oklahoma, for example, right? Like
right,
like that's
right.
just not gonna happen. Yeah. So you know, yeah, we have a diverse, yes, things are diverse, and like I do agree with you there, but like, I might have lost my train of thought about the whole Oklahoma thing, but oh,
Sorry.
so I was gonna say, the the notion of like returning things back to the state, sure, like on paper that really shouldn't change a whole lot, right? You're still engaging in the democratic process, voting for people to then, as it trickles up. So I get it. But like, you also then hear these horror stories that now, and some of it could just be like, the media being the media, right? But like, there are people out there that are like, well, let's go after birth control next. And it's like, well, where do we draw the line now? So we've lost this federal protection related to abortion. It's like, well, is it like, is it going to be a federal mandate that like health insurance can't cover birth control now? Like, is that going to be next? Like, that's where these like it opens the door for that, and that becomes concerning, right? Because like birth control does a lot more than just control birth, but it also like it enables a lifestyle that's I think a genuinely a typically accepted thing, but there's going to be these religious rights that are going to be like, no, 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 sex is for childbirth and nothing else, So like,
Right. And I think that's silly. But I mean, again, I know a lot of people who think that and they're good people. But, I mean, I think that view might be a little antiquated. But again, this is where I find that valuing your health and human life is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's being represented as that. Like, if someone wants to say like, oh, well, I want to engage in this lifestyle that allows me to be sexually liberated, well, there's consequences that come with that. The reason that you put this in this is because for one reason and one reason only, like as far as a biological being is, and that's to procreate and to pass on your genes to your offspring.
well, the reason why it's even pleasurable to begin with, right, is because you're biologically compelled to do it, right? Like
Right.
that's what it all comes down to. Like, yes, of course.
So again, it's like, and so I don't believe that the government should be mandating anything. If anything, they released mandates and gave the states power to control themselves and what they want to do. And again, not a whole lot changed in many states. Again, the ones that matter, the ones where people are the loudest, you can still do it whenever you want. And a lot of these states allow it up until the day before birth, which is, again,
Is that true?
there are some that do. I think California is one of the first that allows it up until birth.
Really?
New York might be another one. Yeah. And it's again, so it just, and that's why I think like, if you want to make laws or do things in the place you live, well, that's totally up to you. Elect the people that'll do that for you. I live in Utah. Like I've been paying attention to what goes on the local level of politics. Cause if things get out of hand, as far as I'm concerned, I might look into going somewhere else where I don't have to follow along with certain things.
What is the political temperature say in Utah? To be honest, like I don't.
Purple.
Okay. I don't think a lot about Utah, to be honest. Like that's just such a place that I don't really even think about. It's not really, you know what I mean? So like,
yeah, it just depends on where you are. If you're in like Salt Lake County, it's pretty blue because it's Salt Lake City.
oh,
But like Provo, and like where I'm north of Salt Lake, but I'm still in a suburb of Ogden, which is still like pretty hipstery. It's pretty liberal, blue there as well. But I mean, country is, I mean, it's mostly red. Like it's pretty red out here. And again, it doesn't, I feel pretty safe around here. Like I know many families along this road that have guns that, if something happened, like they know the people on the street. And if something ever was going on, they would have my back and they would help, my family. The Mormon population out here, like as nutty as the religion is, they're some of the nicest people on the planet. They've helped our family without any need of
like
what's the
returning.
word I'm looking for? Yeah, like remuneration or anything like that. Like they don't ask for anything in return. Like, do you need something? You need food? You need help? Here's a dinner for tonight.
It's so funny, right? Like religion done correctly, it's like, yeah, what an objectively good thing. It's just like it's just too bad that so much of it goes sideways. But like you bring up a good point there. You could say that about a lot of the kind of most religions, right? Like if left done correctly, like yeah, the local church, they're doing a lot of good for people, but the church, like
Right.
yeah, it's like that's where it becomes problematic.
I've talked to people recently, a lot of people on the religious right that, I've brought up the fact like, well, what about like a lot of these churches that, a lot of these priests or whatever that are caught, with kids or whatever. And they're like, well, we're certainly not in support of any of that. And it's not something like every religion has their fanatics, right? And they all think that and actually Mormonism is one of the biggest offenders as far as like being like prophets, like self-establishing prophets and
Yeah.
hey, I talked to God and this is what he told me. But that's not what they're following. Like I'm following the tenets of the Bible, which there's plenty of stories in there that are wacky and crazy, but there's a lot of good things in there, that that people can live their lives by. And he's like, that's the stuff that we're focusing on. And again, I'm not well versed in this. I'm agnostic if I was anything.
Sure.
But I try and understand where people are coming from when they say like, I put God or I put Jesus at the very, very top, like above my family and my kids. And I'm like, oh, that seems a little strange, but if that works for you, whatever it is. Cause again, some of these people are some of the nicest individuals I've ever met, and they're very giving people. So, I think they can't be all that bad. I certainly don't. And that's not me endorsing any religion. It's just me saying like these particular people were really good. They've treated people well. They've helped people. And they don't make excuses for those who are, their hand in the cookie jar, as it were. Like it's, that stuff is really shitty wall to wall. Let me bring up one more thing before we like end this part of the interview or whatever.
Yeah.
What? Because I did post about this kind of quickly on Facebook, and I don't remember if you had a take on it or not. But the Sound of Freedom movie that came out, there's been a lot of backlash from.
Actually, but yeah, go ahead.
There's been a lot of backlash about that, and from where I sit, it's regarding Jim Caviezel's personal politics and like his QAnon affiliation, if that's what he is.
I think that's where he's kind of coming from. I think that was the impression.
Right. But the movie itself, it seems to be getting buried where it can to, even though its messaging is trying to draw attention to Project Underground Railroad and the work that was done by Tim Ballard in bringing this particular ring down or whatever. Why is it such a bad thing that this movie came out?
It's funny. So I have, I do have some thoughts about it. Like, there's this overarching thing. It's like, going back to that QAnon thing, I think Jim Caviezel, I pronounce his name right. He didn't really do this, the publicity of this movie a lot of favors, right? Because he kind of went on to say, like, I think he literally said that Trump was chosen by the actual, like, literal biblical God. That Trump was put on this earth to like save the children or something to that effect, right? And it's I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's like, okay, first of all, that's a weird thing to say, right? Like, so right, and then now let's take that in the context of like how that sort of QAnon thing and how that bled a little bit into to the alt-right at large and the MAGA at large, right? That this whole thing of like, well, if I don't like you, you're obviously a pedophile, and then the notion that all of Hollywood and like all of rich people and all like Democrats, they're all diddling little kids, So there's this. You take all of this context, right, and now you have this movie that's like, by all accounts, like fine. I'm sure it's a perfectly fine movie. The story itself, well, let's face it. Is anyone going to say no? Let's stop the fight against child trafficking. Of course, we want to stop that. Everyone wants that. Every single person wants that. The difference is that like, I'm not like shooting up a pizza place because I think there's a sex trafficking ring involving children out of the basement, which is what happens or has happened.
Something, yeah, that happened, but it's not. It's not
everybody, right? But
it's not the inevitable end to it. Is correct. What I mean.
But I think if you take it, but when you like apply all of that context, right? It's like there's this weird thing in the world now where it's just like, oh, we disagree. You're a fucking pedophile, and it's like, where is this coming from? And so I think it. Let's face it, like people like to bash QAnon anyway, and then the Hollywood machine is definitely more liberal than conservative. So like it all kind of feeds into that. So is this movie getting buried, because of the context of the content of the movie? Actually, probably not. It's getting buried because of all of the things surrounding it. It's getting buried because of Jim Caviezel. It's getting buried because of Epstein and all the shit that like sprang from that, right? It's getting buried because of the temperature of the entertainment industry. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not no one's going to sit here and say that movie's stupid, child trafficking isn't real. They're saying it's stupid probably because it's just like not a good movie, and there's a lot of bullshit that went along with it.
But is that right? Like, just because Caviezel might be a kook, like he's a good actor, like he's been in good movies, he's done really well. Like, sure, he said some weird things. I mean, I know that's going to come with the territory, but should it? I mean, especially this movie, it's almost like we should look past that and be like, hey, this has been going on. We should probably draw attention more to Project Underground Railroad and what they're trying to do.
Well,
Um,
let me posit this. I'm going to say right now, the most I've ever heard of Project Underground, what's it called? Project Underground Railroad.
yeah.
Yeah, the most I've ever heard of it was post this movie. The most I've ever seen anybody talk about these kinds of topics have been post this movie. So like, is it like, let's talk about what's right and what's wrong here. Is it right that this movie is getting buried? I don't know that it's getting buried. I think it's getting all the good publicity. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's a topic that people are discussing. So like, does this end in a net like negative for Project Underground Railroad? Probably not. I think this is the
Hope
most
not.
awareness. No, of course not. And I think this is the most awareness that organization will maybe ever have. So, yeah, I mean, is it getting a weird like, is it getting shown in a strange light culturally speaking? Yes, but like again, not because of the content specifically. It's all the stuff around it. But you're still getting this like this great exposure to what is very likely, and I don't want to speak to all the specifics that I don't know about, but like it is giving exposure to what's probably a better thing to exist, i.e., people trying to stop child trafficking, right? So um, I did actually, but to that point, I did post. It was kind of a little tongue in cheek, but I posted on your page on Facebook where one of the financiers. Granted, this movie was like kickstarted, so anybody could have financed it. It's not like there was a you know strong background check to give this production money. But one of the financiers was arrested for kidnapping a child. So,
Right. And and here's the thing, and that's a good place to like go to, is that I remember, because I remember seeing that I was camping that weekend, and I saw it, and I said what I said. I was like, yeah, well, I hope
like,
justice is
yeah,
done, because
exactly. Which
right.
I
And then I later went and looked at who this person was, and two things that I noticed. One, I don't even remember who was reporting on it, but on his picture they put movie producer, which is wrong, first of all.
like
I
very,
mean, it's
very,
technically right,
very,
because, but
be a
what I
movie
also,
2 minutes, right? Yeah.
right, what I also found out is, yeah, his name is in the credits all the way at the end with all the other people who essentially were Kickstarter supporters or whatever it is, GoFundMe or whatever. Um, but he was like in like the less than $100 donated category.
Right, exactly,
So
exactly.
like,
It's barely, yeah.
right, and so again, justice where it should be done, obviously, but also like weird press against this movie.
Sure.
Like they're trying to contrive a story that's not, like, if they were actually being honest about it, they would have said, oh, a man who donated to, you know, donated $50 to this movie, was found. And what does the child kidnapping mean? Because, and here's the other thing that's really interesting about like sexual assault charges and kidnapping, is that he could have just like taken his son for like one day too many or something like that, and didn't return. And then his crazy wife called the police, and now he's considered child kidnapping. Like, is that what it was? Or did he fucking gag some kid, throw him in the back of his white van, and you know what I mean? Like, what? And this is not a defense of
Oh,
kidnapping children. You know that.
of course. No, and to your point, it'd be like, similarly, like the his level of movie producer, right? That'd be like someone walking into Toys R Us, then getting arrested for child kidnapping, and then saying like, Toys R Us responsible for child kidnapping. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
the same idea. Like, just because you bought a stuffed animal from the store doesn't mean the store had anything to fucking do with
Right.
it. So, I think so. Obviously, going back to me like to poke the bear, that was me just sort of being like, like, look at this.
No, and I knew where you're coming from with that, and it was,
Yeah.
and again, I don't mind you posting on stuff like that or whatever, because I know sometimes it is tongue in cheek, and I know sometimes you're actually trying to engage with something that you believe in, or that you want to give honest pushback on whatever. And I don't mind that. I welcome it. Like, I don't want you to never speak your mind because you think you hurt my feelings or something.
No fear of that happening, believe me.
No, yeah, go nuts, man. I really want people to realize, like, even after this conversation, like we're still going to disagree on a lot of stuff. We're going to butt heads, but as you said, Mike, like, if I'm ever in town, whatever it is, like we'll meet up, we'll have a beer. Like, you don't have to talk about stuff like this all the time. And it's one benefit to have known each other our whole life is that we understand who
Real
we are.
talk, if you needed a place to crash, man, like you get like my door is literally that open to you. You know what I mean? So it's like I I can't remember the last time you posted something on Facebook that I truly agreed, but I still like agree that like you're a bro. Yeah.
I think you liked the pictures of my RV. That was nice.
Yes, that was good. Yep. Yes,
I actually thought about it. It wasn't you that posted. I think the other guy posted something about like posting something more positive, and I was just like, I feel like Facebook is the one place that is usually an echo chamber of positivity, where I think Twitter is the opposite. I think it's a lot of
cesspool, yes.
it's the, or X as it's called now.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, Elon changed it. So like, I that was the other part of the experiment, was kind of like there's things that are happening that I think people post on and talk about, but I think there's an opposite side that's that can be discussed. And and we can do this again, Mike. Honestly, like we could, if there's something down the road that becomes inflammatory again, that we can sit and talk about. Like, I'd be more than down to talk about it. And I even thought in my head, like maybe we'll get to a place where we can do a regular thing where you and I talk about like topics from two opposite sides.
Or at least, that, to be honest.
Yeah. So no, I think it would be good. But it's something we can think about, and it's the time consuming thing, which who knows if I even have the time. But
yeah.
I like talking to you, and I think we're both coming from a good place. I think that's going to be it for this part of the conversation. We're gonna cut this part of the stream, guys. We're gonna go over and we're gonna record an extra segment real quick for my locals. So if you guys are members on locals, you can check that out in a little bit. But I thank you, chat, for joining us for this, and thank you for everyone who's listened on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Mike, is there anything that you want to end with, or?
It's funny because this is the part where people like plug stuff, which I don't have that so much. Other than I can say, thanks for having me on, man. This was a lot of fun. Definitely down to do it again. If anybody finds themselves in Northwest Connecticut, hit up Little Red Barn Brewery. We make some damn good beer. That's where you can find me most days. Other than that, like, you might see me lurking on Facebook. You might see me here on this chat again. Maybe Tom and I do something in the future, but I'll see you when I see it.
Hell yeah. Thank you again, Craig and Side Scrollers crew, for sending your people over here after you were done. Hopefully you got to finish. I think it was Bowser's Fury you were playing, right? He was doing he played like every single Mario game the past couple of months. So I think he's just finishing that up. But thank you guys again. We're gonna roll some credits, and then we'll see you guys next time. Love you all as always. Toodles.